Got you.
Okay.
All right. So is there a motion to approve an amended agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Sheila, have you been able to find these?
I'm looking them up right now on my
Okay.
device. Did you send them or did Jody?
I sent the email to you this morning.
Okay. Got them.
Okay, great. So let's start with SA 3-22, which is from the general fund to the grant fund, and it's $65,000.
So the numbering has been changed. 322 is the one that was on the agenda to begin with, which is the $100,000 from the Maryland Department of Health.
Okay,
So Ms. Smith is here to talk to you about that grant, if you have
Please.
questions.
please do.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, I'm confused now. So which one are we?
We're
Are
looking
we,
at SA 3-22, which is a $100,000 state grant.
Okay, just wanted to make
And-
sure I heard it correctly.
Director Dickinson is about to explain it to us.
This is an additional grant award that we've received for some of the outreach work that that Laura's team is working on. And Ms. Smith is here to give you details about what the grant award is for, what they'll use it for.
So, I'm sorry, are there details about the 100,000? Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Chief of Staff.
Right. Yeah, Ms. Smith. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this is...
Are you on?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I
I'm
think you're
sorry.
going to have to pull it really close.
Yeah, barely.
This is additional money that we have received from the State Department of Health. And I think so it's a program that's our Take Care program on the street program on health. This will take that program through to the end of this fiscal year. It's very welcome money, and it's a very good program.
What are some of the health things that it's doing? Is this helping people get general health care, or is this having to do with inoculations, or?
This has been focused on the pandemic testing and vaccine. It probably will, as the year goes on, have an additional things related to the pandemic, but at the moment, that's the priority.
Okay. Are there questions from the committee?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. I remember seeing a grant request from TOLA, probably a month ago, to the health department. Is this the funding for that grant request?
No,
I
this
thought-
is separate. This is separate from that. That was the No Harm program, which relates to violence and drugs. This is not that program. This is the ongoing Take Care team that Laura supervises that program.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to give a favorable recommendation to SA 322.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to be heard not on that, but on general discussion.
Okay. Do you have a problem seconding the motion?
Well, I do. I've got some questions.
Okay.
I don't understand the explanation that's here. It says the county has only awarded the city $35,000.
No, you're on the
You're
different
looking
one.
at the
Oh,
wrong
okay.
one. It's the
Yeah.
$100,000.
No, we're on SA 3, which is in your Granicus.
All right. No wonder I
Yeah.
was mixed up.
In the meantime, I will second the motion so that we can continue discussion.
Okay.
Katie to the rescue.
This one right here.
Thank you. So it seems pretty straightforward. The state is giving us $100,000. We have a very good set of uses for it to go through to in the Hispanic community, and we have a very good Hispanic liaison who, by all accounts, is doing wonderful work. What's to worry?
Okay. You already seconded it, right?
I did. I just for form, so we could have the discussion. I don't want to rush things, so are there any further details? The explanation we heard from the chief of staff was that this is primarily going to help people get vaccinations. I think this is also a community that does have some access to health care needs, and I'm assuming that wherever we can help that, given the resources, we will do that.
Okay.
All right, are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, now, shall we continue on? Should we do the FT next, or should we go to SA4?
I'm not sure it matters. They're both related to each other.
Right.
Let's do SA4.
All right.
I will describe in general what's happening financially here, and then I'll turn the microphone over to the city manager to explain more about the program.
Okay.
As you know, we have an opioid grant program that we've been running every year.
Right.
And this year, we wanted the county to give us, I don't know what we originally asked them for. They had given us 96,000, something like that. And this year, they could only give us 35,000. So in order to provide for a robust program, we are asking that $65,000 be used from the contingency fund to supplement what the county has given us, and we will transfer that amount over into the grant fund so we can spend it. And the SA is the entry, the budget entry in the grant fund that adds the amount of funding that we need to get that amount up to $100,000. So as you see in the revenue section on the SA 422 form, we add $65,000 of funding from the general fund, and we reduce the grant revenue that we had originally budgeted by $59,000. So this is a net increase to the grant of $6,000 from what you passed in the FY22 budget in June.
I'm sorry,
All right,
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Payon and then Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Forgive me if you just covered that. Your voice is quite muffled with the masks on. So let me apologize in advance if I'm asking you something that you just explained. But it says here that we only got $35,000 from the county, yet up top it says county grant revenue $59,000. What? I don't get it.
All right, so in the June budget that you passed for FY22, you had programmed $94,000 for the opioid program, and we expected that to come from the county. And what you're seeing on this form is we have reduced that $94,000 because we're not getting grant revenue of $94,000, we're only getting $35,000. So this entry here reduces, it's got brackets on it, so we're reducing the county grant revenue by $59,000. And we are changing that to $65,000 coming from the general fund. Overall, this increases the budget for the opioid program by $6,000. I just wanted to present the change out of the sources.
So I think it's clearer if you look at the FT first, FT 2-22, where it's showing we're taking $65,000 from the contingency fund, and we're doing it to the grant fund, and then that $65,000 carries over to SA 4-22. That's that $65,000 you see there. We're reducing the amount of money, the $94,000 we expected to get from the state, by $59,000 down to the $35,000 we actually got. And then we're also in, the $6,000 is an increase to the $94,000 to bring the total amount of funding up to $100,000.
It brings that total grant budget up to $100,000.
All right, and this money is going to be used for, it says, facilitate a robust opioid program. Any idea what that means?
Correct. So thank you for the segue. So I'll talk about what this money is going to be used for. So,
Mr. Chair, before we move on to the specifics, I still have questions about what Ms. Dickinson was providing. I mean, we can go forward, but I'm going to come back for further explanation.
Well, it's your pleasure. If you still need to go through the numbers, I think Mr. Jarrow is going to give us the substance behind the numbers, but let's make sure everybody understands the numbers.
I would like to talk about the numbers again, because this is not clear to me, and Alderman Payon was asking questions that were in my mind. The 59,000 is what is throwing me off. The 59,000 is the difference between what we thought the county was going to give us and we counted on in the budget and what was actually given to us.
Correct.
And so if you add 59 and 35, you get what? 95, 85, 95.
The 94 that we originally budgeted.
Right. So what's the 6,000?
So in the grant fund budget, we had appropriated $94,000 for this program. In order to get that total appropriation to the $100,000 point, I need to add $6,000 to the appropriations.
So where did we allocate 100,000? Because I'm hearing 94,000.
So you, the council in the budget process appropriated $94,000 for the opioid program. These two budget changes are going to increase that by $6,000 net to a total of $100,000 because OEM feels that's what they need for a robust opioid program.
Okay. So we are actually increasing
Correct.
the
We're
amount
increasing the total by 6.
by
And we're
6,000.
also changing the funding sources.
Okay. Because I don't think that piece is very clear. That we are actually increasing the allocation. Not that I object at all, but in looking at the documentation that's in front of me in both documents, neither of them speak to $100,000. But yet there's that $6,000. I understand that. I hope others who are watching will also have the benefit of understanding.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I did not, you're right, the explanation did not include the $100,000 amount. It talks about the $94,000, and then it said the appropriate, it adds $6,000 overall to the opioid grant budget, but I did not specify that the total is now $100,000. You're correct.
Thank you. I thought it was just the English teacher that didn't understand these numbers. But I'm good now.
So both alderpersons were confused by that, and I admit I was initially too until I sat down and actually I started with the FT, which made it easier for me to follow. But when we're at the city council meeting, I'll take into account the confusion and try to include the explanation that we're also increasing from the 94,000 originally budgeted up to 100,000, and that's what that additional $6,000 is for, or showing.
Mr. Chair, I go back to my question a few minutes ago. What exactly is this being used for?
Yeah, happy to respond to that. So our opioid program actually consists of 4 parts that are performed by 4 different departments. So it's OEM, police, fire, and then the mayor's office has a program as well. So the OEM program is called OD Free. You may have heard that term, OD Free Annapolis. That's their program. The requirement for that is $20,000. That $20,000 will go $5,000 towards a contract services for an assistant project coordinator position, $10,000 for training and education, and then $5,000 for supplies to support their outreach efforts. The police portion of it, so that was $20,000 for OEM, $20,000 is required for APD, $10,500 for a part-time clinician, so contract services.
I'm sorry, David, what was the police amount?
$10,500.
10,000. All right, thank you.
And I can make this sheet available that lays all of this out. $6,480 for an officer for officer and civilian staff overtime and benefits, and then about $3,020 for outreach supplies for youth participants. The third piece is the fire department portion of it, and their program is called Your Life Matters. And there's this $30,000. $28,000 goes for overtime and benefits for staff for Your Life Matters events, and then $1,200 for supplies for outreach materials, printing services, and supplies for this program, Your Life Matters. The last piece is the no harm piece that Alderwoman Finlayson mentioned that we didn't get the grant for from the county. So this is $30,000. $10,000 of that is for supplies for printing services, outreach gear, and equipment. And then the balance, $20,000, is for contract services for personnel services such as photographer, video services, PSAs, web episodes, I guess that is, and graphic design services. So $20,000 for emergency services, $20,000 for police, $30,000 for fire, and $30,000 for mayors, rolls up to $100,000.
All right, it sounds like some $30,000 plus a little bit is for personnel. Is that correct? I thought you said 10.5 for one.
So the total contract services is, let's see, 15, about 35,000 for contract services.
I'm sorry.
About 35,000 for contract services of the 100,000.
All right, do we pay benefits with that, or is that?
Let's see. So assistant project coordinator position, so that's contract services, so we probably would not. Part-time clinician, contract services, again, it depends on what type of a contract it is, whether we pay benefits or not. Overtime and benefits within the fire department, obviously the overtime with benefits for the fire personnel. And then contract services for the mayor's office, probably not.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for the question. Can I suggest that for the council meeting, the supplemental information would be very helpful to our colleagues? Alderman Finlayson, did that satisfy your need for detail about how the money was being allocated and spent?
I could understand very little of what Director Gerald, City Manager Gerald was saying. It's terribly distorted. Whenever he turned his head ever so slightly, I could understand clearly. I put it in the chat, but I think no one saw it. Anyway, so Mr. Gerald, could you just provide me with the list of what you just read off? I don't have any objections. I don't think anything in there. But I would like to see the list.
I'll send that to you right now. That will be, I'm going to forward you an email from MK and OEM that has that detail.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'd say that this is over and above the usual level of detailed accounting that we normally get, so I think we all appreciate that. We know this is an important issue in the city, and I don't think there's anyone that doesn't wish this effort well and wish we could do more, but at least we're doing this. So are there other questions about the, actually, we're really discussing simultaneously FT2-22 and SA4-22. Are there other questions about those, or will someone offer a motion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't really have any questions per se about this, but the city is doing a lot more than this in attacking the opioid problem. Isn't that correct?
I believe so, but we'll let the city speak for itself.
This is the funding that's required for the opioid program. So $100,000 is what's needed. We applied for a state grant for the $100,000, thinking that we would at least get a portion of it. We didn't. We got $0 from the state grant application. So then we went to the health department, the county health department, and requested funding, and we got $35,000. So this $65,000 is the balance of the opioid program in the city. These are the four parts that make up our opioid program in the city.
So there are additional programs that.
Not that I'm aware of. This is
Well, there are in the.
I mean, there's a lot of other sort of ancillary things that police and fire do in addition to
there
the
are things
formalized
that
program.
we partially fund through the community grants. So, and this is one of the reasons why we like to do the community grants. It helps leverage people to get grant funds from elsewhere. So we know there's a lot of initiatives that are grant funded, and of course there's a lot of additional initiatives that are going on in the community from private organizations. I think we all wish we could spend more money than this. We only budgeted ourselves in the budget $94,000. We're upping it a little bit, but we have a pretty detailed description, all of us but Alderwoman Finlayson, of how the city is allocating its money. So I think that Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, to add to the question that, and City Manager Gerald just sent me his list of items, so thank you for that. To add to the question about what else we're doing, on Monday, Mayor and I had an opportunity, and Alderman Gay, to tour the wellness van, which is the health department mobile unit that will be spent 1 day a week in my ward on Newtown Drive, and 1 day a week, Wednesdays in my ward, and Thursdays at Harbor House and East Areas. And the sole purpose of that van is to help people get off of drug dependency. You know, we talk a lot about and that's just one piece of helping to solve the problem. This van has tremendous potential, and it will be in these locations every week, so that we're trying to meet the residents where they are. They may not be ready to walk into that van this week, but in 2 weeks they may be ready to walk into that van. And practitioners that are there are totally prepared to help them in every aspect of getting beyond their addiction, from medications to, transportation services, to whatever they need, counseling, those social services that we talk extensively now about are being provided in this wellness van. So we should, I guess, advertise, not a good word, but share the message that that is a very good tool for us in helping our residents. So, thank you.
Thank you. At this point, if there are no more questions, I would entertain motions on both FT 22, which we can take them separately, and then SA 4-21 or 22. Is there a motion on FT 2-22?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to support FT 222.
All right, and just to be clear, this is $65,000 coming from the contingency fund and going into the grant fund. Madam Finance Director, usually when we take money from the contingency fund, we get an accounting of what the fund was and what it is now. Do we have those numbers handy? I don't even remember the size of the contingency fund. At this
Not at this moment, but we can look it up in the next couple minutes and give it to you
All
before
right,
the end of the
let me
season.
just say, we still have, it's fairly early in the fiscal year, I guess
I think it's full now.
Right,
We haven't had any other uses of contingency, although I'm not sure of that, because we did have some special contingency needs, and I want to make sure I'm not.
was it $400,000 that we set aside for contingency?
It's close to 400. I don't think it's
Right.
exactly 400,000.
So I think one of the concerns of the Finance Committee is to make sure we.
You're right. We usually have a sentence on the description that says this will leave this much balance in the contingency fund, and it's not there this
So
time.
the vast majority of the fund is still available to us for other.
Yes,
other
and one of the
contingency
intentions, it's all emergency needs, and one of it's winter, which we haven't gotten to yet.
I'll ask the committee, do you want to wait a moment? Katie is getting those numbers for us.
I'm curious about the numbers, Mr. Chair, but I don't think I really need that to vote on this
right.
one way or the other. I'm much more concerned that whether we are simply throwing money at a very serious problem in the city. And in going over this, it appears that these are good and legitimate expenses. I plan on supporting this, but I'm disappointed that out of a $152 million budget, we have something that doesn't even amount to a drop in the bucket for drug treatment. I know there are many other places to get it, but I'm supportive of this. That's the bottom line. But the reason I ask so many questions is that I just want to make sure that this money's being well spent, and I think that it is, at least in theory, if you're to believe that this is where the money is going to end up going. I have no reason not to believe that. So.
Well, and
just,
that's our
and
purpose.
just to be clear, the health department has primary responsibility for the opioid program, and so they put much more money towards it than we do. What we do is try to get them into the proper channels, but also provide Narcan, provide materials, provide outreach to the kids before they ever get into this problem. So we try to head it off before that, but once, when you talk about treatment, that's all health department. That we don't provide treatment at all.
I agree. The health department's got to be the lead on any program like this that we have, and that's what we pay our county taxes for.
Right. But let's not forget, this is another one of the big reasons why we created the Office of Community Services, because our hope is that those staff will help connect people to these resources, these specifically from the city, but more importantly, the much bigger resources that are available through the county and other philanthropic sources. So I think in many ways we forget all of the complicated things that we do, but they do focus on these issues in really not straightforward ways, but meaningful ways nevertheless. Do we have a number on the contingency fund, please?
Yes, after this transfer, there will be $331,500 left in the contingency fund, and this was not the first draw. We had the pool security issue that we talked about
yes,
in
yeah.
July, and I don't recollect, how much was that, do you know? Trying to remember how much that was, 25,000 for pool security. That's what I was looking up right now to see if I could figure out what that difference was quickly. So we did pull some for pool security. So this is the second item pulling from contingency.
Okay, and we do have other resources if there are the one-time only fund and things like that if we get in a bind. So it's not like we're destitute, but I do thank my two colleagues for your due diligence. That's exactly what we're here for as a committee. Before we take the vote, I see the city attorney here. I just want to make sure that, are you here to help us with legal matters, sir, or did you have something that you wanted to discuss relevant to any of these transactions? No. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your presence. I think Alderwoman Finlayson is distracted right now.
It's nice to know that your presence, strikes fear in the heart of people on committees.
What do we do? Are we ready for a vote on FT 22-22?
Mr. Chair, I am ready to vote, and I'm on the phone with our IT because the distortion is extremely disruptive, and I can't understand what's being said. So, but yes, I am ready to vote.
So
By the
we have
way,
a motion, we need a second.
We have a motion, I thought, and a second.
We don't have a second.
Second.
No,
No, you moved it.
She made the motion.
I thought Fred.
I'll second.
Yeah, I thought Fred did second. All right, well, we now have a second. So, all those in favor of recommending approval of FT 2-22 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. I believe, have we now accomplished all of our SA and FT business?
No, you need to
Oh, we
vote
have to
on
do
SA4.
SA4-22. Yes, so the SA4 sort of completes the loop. SA4 recognizes the transfer of grant funds, recognizes the shortfall in money that we expected when we appropriated the $94,000, and recognizes an additional $6,000 to bring the total amount of expenditure for this opioid project to $100,000. Are there any further questions or points of discussion on SA 4-22?
Yes, it is.
Hearing none, I would accept a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of
SA
this
4-22.
4-22. Sorry. Still on the phone with Beck.
Alderman Payon? No.
It
All
is-
right, I will second SA 4-22,
Okay, terrific.
and I will leave the floor open for discussion. Alderman Payon, can we understand your discomfiture on this?
Yeah, I'm a little bit uncomfortable simply because I still don't totally understand the source of the money, but it's going to pass. I mean,
Well, no, look, we're the three stewards that are entrusted to sort these things out. If there's discomfort here, I can rest assured there will be discomfort amongst the rest of our colleagues. So I do think we should take the time to iron it out. Is your source of confusion over where the additional $6,000 is coming from?
well, I'm just reading the explanation, and it doesn't seem to match what's up top. Now, I know I asked the city finance officer about this a few moments ago, and there is an explanation. I just don't, it's still not completely clear to me It says the county only awarded the city 35,000, yet county grant review up top says 59,000.
The 59 is explainable by the shortfall. We had an expectation of getting $94,000 from first the state, then the
Okay.
county. We only got 35. So when you
All
subtract
right, that's
35 from
that's
94.
the difference between the
59.
two.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you had already surmised that in some of your earlier
All right, and
comments.
the transfer of $65,000, FT 222,
The
is the rest of the money.
That's coming from the FT, where we do the $65,000, taking it out of the contingency fund and putting it into the grant fund.
Not sure I understand the term county grant expense, but be that as it may,
We tried two sources to get the funding for the 94,000. One was the state, they gave us nothing. The other, then we turned to the county health department, they were able to give us 35,000. So we
All right.
fell short.
I'm ready to vote on
All
it.
right. All those in favor of recommending approval for SA 4-22, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The recommendation passes. Again, I thank you, colleagues. When and if I'm called upon to make an explanation at the city council meeting, I will try to head off some of the confusion. The numbers are a little confusing, and I'm sure if we're confused, some of our colleagues will be. But I have to say, I feel like you, Alderman Payon. I wish we could spend more. I do think we are doing other things, but at least we're doing something. And I like the fact that it's really a four-part program. It's not just one clump of money in one place. So I think that increases our ability to get to more people who need the help.
I don't necessarily want us to spend much more money, but I'd like to see us do more than
I was
we're
going to
doing.
say, it's uncharacteristic of you, sir.
No, I did not say spend more money. But
All right. All right. Madam Guidance Counselor, are we through with our our appropriation agenda? I had suggested that we add to today's discussion. We normally get an update from the finance director, and I do want to hear that. But I'd also suggested that we begin, I think belatedly, discussion of both the establishment of a task force to study what, if any, city services could be better done at the county level. And the other thing that we approved in the budget was a survey of citizens' preferences on services. As I think those are both, and Alderwoman Finlayson, you deserve credit for both of these motions, and I think they're very important, and I think we're hearing more and more discussion about this, that it does seem to me that we need to take some time to get these, or either hear about what initiatives have already commenced at the administration level, or to get these things kickstarted. So I would start, I think, by talking to the city manager or city attorney about establishing a task force that would be charged with looking at the services provided by the city and services provided by the county, and whether there are any opportunities. The underlying presumption, and in fact the things that I've read in the paper and heard from people, is that the county can provide these services more efficiently or more thoroughly, whatever the thinking is. I always am reminded by constituents that we are members of the county, first of all, so we deserve to get services from the county. But when we turn the services over to the county, we do cede some of our autonomy, our prerogatives over the level of services and how they're delivered. So I think that's two sides of the same coin. Do we gain efficiencies and somehow cut costs? And remember, turning it over to the county doesn't make the costs go away on an individual basis. It just means we pay more money in county taxes and less money in city taxes. The hope is that there's a differential there and we pay less in the end because we're getting some advantage from the county. That's all conjecture, but it is worth pursuing. So now that I've yammered on a little bit, I would assume, Mr. City Attorney, that just like we did for the Maritime Task Force, we would need to have some kind of resolution that would establish this task force, or is this something that can be done by the administration at the request of the council through the budget?
It could occur in both ways, through a council resolution or from the mayor's office to establish it, yes.
What's the thinking of the committee? Doing a resolution at this late date for sure gets it established, but I guess I would ask again, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Lyles, do we have time to put together a resolution to establish the task force, and do you have the resources to help us write that? On the other hand, colleagues, do we want to rely on this being done by the administration? And again, I would ask the administration in person of Mr. Gerald, do you have the resources to pull this together? So two different questions, one to my colleagues about, is your preference to do a resolution, in which case we need to get crafting that quickly, or is your preference in terms of the fact that it might be more expeditious to ask the administration to pursue this? And we haven't heard from the city manager about where those resources would come from. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As the sponsor of this amendment, I guess it is, and having a bit of experience with creating task force, as I did with the Public Works Task Force, I truly believe we can do it in the time that we have. I feel very strongly that it should be a resolution that outlines exactly what our intent is. And the selection of the participants, while it may not be specific in nature, it should be specific in content. And what I mean by that is, we may not say who the people are, but we should say what the professional skill set they bring to the table should be. If you recall, with the Public Works Task Force, we had people with an expertise in dealing with traffic, someone else who was the expert on hard drive, someone else who was the expert on land, and so on, where we had 22 people on that task force. I think we need to be specific as to what we want. And we have a starting point. I mentioned this previously, and very recently I was delivered a package to my mailbox at City Hall, which came from Mrs. Florestano, who was on a committee that had the same focus. And I want to say it was either the early 1980s, late 1970s. And while a lot of the data, a lot of it, so there is a starting. So we're not starting from scratch. We have some data that can improve, and as a springboard, take us where we want to be. But I feel very strongly that we need a resolution that outlines specifically what we want this task force to accomplish.
Okay, thank you for that. Alderman Payon, what's your sense?
At this point, I don't really have much to say, Mr. Chair.
All right. I think I agree with you, Alderwoman Finlayson, that we're better suited to do this as a resolution. But I think it's incumbent upon us, the Finance Committee, and you in particular, generated this part of the budget and was passed by the council. We need to do some noodling to sit down and think about the specifics. We can't just dump this on the Office of Law and say, bring us something beautiful. So, yes, Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, you have a couple of structural difficulties in leading to that eventual result, which is a report from whatever committee or task force you deem appropriate in this instance. If you put together a resolution and you have a very full agenda in the first meeting in September, if that resolution goes before the council and is passed, you then have a certain number of days to name people to the task force, which wouldn't happen until the next meeting in September. If you can get that done before then, history suggests that the larger the committee or task force, the harder it is to get all of the people on it. If you are into October, you then you condense the amount of time the task force has, because the council, per your charter, has no meeting in November. And effectively, at the last meeting in October, or the last day of October, is the last point at which this council could field any report or information coming from this group. And then the election occurs in November, and then the swearing in of the new folks. So there's technically no meeting, according to your charter, after October 31st. So it would be a very tight timeline. Even if you named, several people to do it, they'd have about 30 days or so. And that's assuming you get everybody you want on the task force. I would suggest, however, there may be some alternatives, and that is possibly working with the city manager and staff to do an internal review of where those kinds of things that you want to see maybe shifting back to the county first, because then you kind of craft the report down to the essential elements of change that are possible. Secondly, as I've done this before in other situations, maybe meet with the county to determine if it's even something that they want, because you can say you want a service to go, but the county and the county council have to be the ones to actually determine if they can take this extra service over in a way that meets your particular needs. That discussion may conform the whole task force down to, again, the things that are possible, as opposed to a universe of services that you now provide to the citizens of Annapolis.
So let me respond in a couple of ways, because the pressures are considerable from many different directions. There's a presumption that we would get this done in time for this next budget, and I think we need to question the feasibility of that presumption. I suspect the administration is already starting to do some preliminary thinking about, I hope they are, because we have some union negotiations involved as well, the next budget. I guess a legal point that I would ask is, if we do by resolution establish a task force and appoint members, their work can carry across terms, can it not? I mean, their work wouldn't sine die, their charge wouldn't sine die. It would just be if the legislation wasn't passed.
That's my understanding.
The resolution would meet its terminus at the end of your term.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
The resolution would meet its terminus at the end of this council's term.
I'm not clear. May I, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
Are you suggesting that if we pass a resolution and we give a task force 6 months to do their work, and we pass sine die, that their work is no longer suitable, or not suitable, but they can't continue their work?
Well, that was my question to the city attorney. And
Yes, that's what I think would be the issue with a resolution at this stage, because a new council coming in, unless they picked it up and adopted it going forward, the resolution would end with this term.
So are
so
you
that
saying
essentially, oh, sorry, go
nothing
ahead.
nothing that we do passes beyond our term? That
That's-
doesn't.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest that just sort of from a practical standpoint, that it would be more appealing to the new council to have appointed the task force and to accept their recommendations than to have the previous council select the task force. Even if the city attorney says, yes, it carries over and it has full effect, ultimately it's going to be the new council that's going to receive that report. And I guess in my opinion, it would be more meaningful to them to be able to appoint the members as well. There's a couple different parts to this, and I wasn't sure in which order we were going to discuss this, but for the task force, we're going to have to decide what services we want them to look at. I don't think we want to look across the whole city. That's a work pill that's huge. So I think we want to identify certain services. I thought that we were going to do the customer service survey first to help inform
That's a good
the
point.
services that are going to be looked at. So it may be a chicken and egg thing here. Which one do we want to go first on? And maybe the customer service or the resident survey is a better place to start. And then based on what comes out of that, then we look at what services are going to be looked at under the new council.
I think you're making a good point, but let me just pursue certainly the budget and the things that were passed in the budget, including these two things, carry over into the next administration, the next term. The budget carries over into the next council term, and these two items were part of the budget that we passed in June. So I would hope that these two things would carry over into the next, stay in this fiscal year, but carry over to the next council term. So they would still be live as entities in the budget and therefore available to the next council.
The budget is passed by an ordinance.
Correct.
Yes, but the fees and fines are, under the charter, go into a schedule in the code.
Right.
So
So
the
I take it
resolution is
by-
to change the fees and fines, but the fees and fines are established by ordinance as well, because they're in the budget.
So by that answer, I'm presuming you're saying that this will carry over by virtue of being in the budget and the budget being passed by ordinance.
Yes.
Right. That makes sense to me.
So,
Madam Finance Director.
as far as the council's resolutions terminating at their term, I think we need to study that a little bit more because, for instance, our debt policies were adopted by resolution like, I don't know how many councils ago, maybe 2 councils previous to this. So if that would mean it would terminate, we don't have policies in place. So I think if there's something we need to do differently and adopt those in a different way, we need to do it.
Well, you raise a very good ancillary point, which is also our 1820, which established the one-time only fund, and some of the other pour-over things was done by resolution, and I think those really need to be done by ordinance or by regulation. But I think that distracts us from the current point. The city manager suggests that a citizen survey is a good prelude to direct the task force, and I think that makes some sense to me. I have some similar concerns, though, about how quickly we can construct and field a survey. I almost would say, having some survey experience myself, that any survey we can do during this term may not be a very good survey, but I'm not sure that I would put my professional credentials on that, but that is certainly my notion.
Mr. Chair,
Wouldn't be worth the money we're
Right.
spending to have it done in,
Yeah,
you
and
know, a month
especially
or
if
so.
we have to do an RFP to select the firm that's doing the survey, that's going to eat up the next 2 months by itself, doing the RFP and the selection of the firm.
So,
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, Alderwoman Finlayson?
I thought our survey, and my intent in sponsoring this, was to evaluate what the community values, not evaluating our efforts, but evaluating what they felt most important, not who they feel is most important, but what they feel is most important as far as the city's services. And I think that's what we need to keep in front of us. And so I'm not sure that this time of year, we're in the election season, would have any sway on, it may for some people. But I hope we're looking for finding the value in the services we provide and how the community responds to those services. So is
Well,
there a different understanding?
We're having a hard time hearing you, but I think what you said, let me see if I can repeat back to you to see if I heard it correctly, that you're not sure that conducting a survey right now during the election period would be the right time to do it, but that no, okay, I'm sorry, your connection is bad, terrible, you keep breaking up.
Well, and that's the problem I'm having with hearing you guys. And I think they were trying to fix it for me, and now there may be a distortion. What I was saying is that I don't feel that the purpose of this survey was to give the community an opportunity to weigh in on what they value the most as far as our services are concerned. Not evaluating the work that we do, because that's what I thought I heard you say. Maybe I misunderstood because of the discussion. But the intent of this survey is to give the community an opportunity to weigh in on what they value the most. And then in turn, figuring out how to pay for it. So is that not the direction we're going in with the survey?
Well, I think the question is open at this point. I think that we gave a generic definition of the survey and the budget, but now is the time, I think, to refine the very points that you're raising. And in thinking about it, as I'm not a survey methodologist, but I certainly worked on survey methods, there are ways that you can construct surveys to do a scalar. There are ways that you make people make binary choices to make their ultimate preferences become apparent. But that's heavy-duty, heavy-lifting survey work. I don't think that, in my view, that kind of survey could be constructed and executed between now and the end of October. So I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get this on the agenda. I'm fearful that, I believe we could begin survey development through a contract, and that could even happen in this term, but it would not likely be executed this year. It may be available for some enlightenment to the budget as the budget is presented by the mayor to the council, the first meeting in April. That's a possibility, but again, that's what we would have to learn from the survey experts that would respond to a request for proposal.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to respond.
Please.
I was very clear during the budget process in outlining my vision for this survey. I was very clear. So I'm hoping that that is not distorted in any way. I believe that we should not hamper the process. You know, we have all dealt with surveys in our various professions, but I think we should leave the construct to the experts that we hire, giving them a clear outline, parameters of what we want to learn at the end of the process, but being cautious of tainting that process. So, you know, I'm very clear, and I'm willing to sit down with Manager Gerald and others, yourselves, to kind of hammer this out immediately. Because my hope was that there would be some result in time for next year's budget deliberation. So I think we have the responsibility to get this rolling, and so that, you know, when the next term begins, the work will already have begun.
So I will get to you in 1 second, but let me, I will admit I did not commit that portion of the budget that we passed to memory, but I think I do have a clear sense of what we talked about in the Finance Committee and recommended as part of the budget. But is it your sense, your understanding that we would do a procurement to purchase the services of a survey entity to conduct this survey? Well, I would say that that alone will take us beyond the end of this term. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. In fact, I firmly believe we should. But the devil is in the details. Specifying the procurement is going to go a long ways towards what services we get. And I do think time is of the essence. I do think we need to have a meeting, and I don't know how we do this with Open Meetings Act, but we need to have a discussion with the city manager and the finance director and the procurement department to get going on getting that procurement put together pretty quickly, if we're going to have any chance of it being informative to the fiscal 23 budget.
Well, you know, we had spoken, and I'm sorry, Ms. Alderman Payon, but I think this is important to be clear. You know, we had mentioned using the community college's resources. You know, we don't have to do, you know, a procurement process that's going to take us months. Maybe we do, but maybe we don't. I just want us to keep our options open. And if the college, you know, we use the University of Maryland in addition to the community college. And so, again, I think this is doable, and I think it's crucial that we not predict the negative. This is doable, and let's work towards that end.
All right, let me turn to Alderman Payon because he has a time constraint.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did not support this as part of the budget. I don't support it. Didn't support it then, and I don't really support it now, but I also understand that to a large extent that train has left the station. My observation is that if we are going to do this, number one, I don't think we're going to find anybody to do a thorough survey for $50,000. If I were a betting man, I'd say it's going to cost us more than that. Number two, I think that this is part of our job as aldermen in our ward to present the information that a survey would be presenting to the city. Number three, if we're going to do it, and apparently we are, I think the procurement process is going to, I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. We could go to our procurement department And by the time, we could go there tomorrow, and by the time we got something written up and presented and sent out, it'll be November before we even hire anybody. And that's not a cut or a criticism of our procurement process. It's
Reality.
in order to get the best person possible to do this survey, it takes time. And I think this would be no exception. I think that we need to take our time. I agree that, again, if we went out tomorrow and got this done, I think the earliest we'd be looking at this would be, the earliest we'd be looking at results would be March, perhaps. And I don't even think that, again, if I were a betting man, I don't think most people are going to respond to this because, we can't even get more than 20 or 25% of our population to vote. Maybe that'll change this time with a different voting method, I don't know. But $50,000 is a lot to spend. I suspect we'll be spending more than that. And I think if we're going to do that, don't worry about this being done, completed by November, whatever the election day is, or December. I think it's December 6th is the.
You don't know what the election day is? Is that because?
December. However, I do know that December 6th is my last day. So I think there's no way it would be done by December 6th under the best of circumstances. And, if we're going to do that, we might as well just, do it right. Again, I don't really support this, but that's already been argued. So, but if we're going to do it, let's do it right.
I agree with that last statement, but let me turn to the city manager. You've heard us, our machinations here. Do you have any notions to offer to us?
No, I think the value in having this is going to be next spring when the budget comes over to the council and the council's deliberating on the budget. I don't think it's going to inform decisions for the mayor's preparation of the budget because we're going to prepare it like we always prepare it, and that's, the departments are going to look at their operations and adjust their budget the way they need to for each year, and we'll be looking for cuts like we always do, and we'll submit the budget. And then the council, during their deliberations, I think this would be beneficial. But I also think it's beneficial to understand the public's preferences or thoughts about the services and how that relates to potential either turning it over to the county or outsourcing. And I guess we haven't really talked about outsourcing some of these things, but the county is one option, but outsourcing is another option that may be looked at. But I do think that doing the survey first will be instructive towards that process. Again, because I think we want to focus that in on just certain services, and those departments that are looked at will be heavily involved with the task force. You were asking about resources that are going to be available. Those departments that are being looked at will be very heavily involved, and we'll have staff involved with that process. So we'll make them available, and that will be a very important thing for them to be involved with as those are being looked at.
So can I suggest this, and I'm saying this for your ears also, Alderwoman Finlayson, could we in the very near term, could you find on your calendar some time to speak? We can't do it together because we would violate the Open Meetings Act, but to speak to Alderwoman Finlayson and to me so we can talk about the basics to go into a procurement and then get that into the procurement hopper. So we're at least giving ourselves a chance to get this up and running and moving. Alderwoman
Absolutely.
Finlayson,
And
does that-
Alderwoman Finlayson and I think we've had at least one meeting back in July after the budget was passed to start that discussion. So we'll pick up on those again.
Okay.
May I also suggest that maybe we invite Mr. DeTaff, for example, or someone with his professional background to help us, I don't want to say narrow, but help us focus on where we want to go.
The only thing, I know that the community college no longer supports his survey efforts, but if he were to be a potential bidder, and I would like to think that he could be, we may have a difficulty in inviting him, but we can always make that overture. I think that's up to the city manager to figure out how we get some input, and we're gonna have to select a technical panel to review bids and those sorts of things.
I just think it might be helpful to have someone with professional, and maybe we have people in the community that are listening who have done surveys on a scale like we're talking about, that can just help us focus. And maybe we're okay, but maybe we're not, because maybe we're thinking our pie in the sky, and it's not realistic. I've done surveys for, educators around the country, 100,000 educators, but that's not the same as. So, I just think we need maybe some guidance. Maybe not, but just.
I think Alderman Payon, you've made your position on this clear. I think Alderwoman Finlayson and I were in the positive inclination towards this, and I think at this point I would like to ask the city manager to find some time to talk to both of us, and we can flesh out things that might be the basis for procurement. And then I think we need to try to move forward expeditiously. If we don't move quickly, I think there's very little chance that it'll help inform the council with its results when we get the budget turned over to us in April. So I feel that urgency, and I think you do as well.
And the resolution. I mean,
Well,
we've
I
got
think
moving
the
also.
city attorney has pretty much said that the resolution will not work. If I understood you correctly, Mr. Lyles, doing a resolution to do the survey, first of all, I don't know that we need it. We already have it passed by ordinance in the budget.
Okay.
So I'm not sure we would need to get into writing a resolution for the survey.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So fortunately, that's not an additional, I wouldn't want to call it an impediment, but step that we have to take. I think this is pretty much already been authorized to the administration to do by vehicle of procurement. And I think we can sit down and help the city manager in any way we can, but we want to move forward. All right, are there any other things that we need to discuss relevant to either the citizen survey or the task force? I think we've actually advanced the agenda pretty thoroughly with this discussion. Failing that, Alderman Payon needs to leave us. Are there any other things on the agendas? Madam Finance Director, do you have any issues to report to us at this time?
Just to remind you that the bond ordinance should be on public hearing for the upcoming meeting, and the vote on that will hopefully take place the second meeting of September. So we have the bond authority that we need for our ongoing capital projects.
Right.
And we are getting ready to do a bond sale with a significant refunding portion, but I can report on that at your next meeting. It won't
Okay.
happen before then.
All right.
And then we had the good news about the Moody's rating being upgraded to AA1. And so that brings us within one step of a AAA. I'm not sure when, if we can ever get there, but it was very good news.
Well, the good news about even the rating we have is that it's my understanding that in terms of the interest we need to pay on bonds, that it's somewhat negligible. So it's good to have it, and we always need to strive for AAA, but I think we're in pretty darn good shape.
I would agree with that. It wouldn't be a significant difference, and it would be difficult because of the reserves that they require that you set aside for that kind of rating.
Right. All right. Alderman Payon has left us. Alderwoman Finlayson, is there anything else, or would you make a motion to adjourn?
Well, before I do, I just want to congratulate. I know we gave her an applause, but Director Dickinson, and Manager Gerald, and the entire finance department, and everyone who contributed to our success in this bond rating improvement. So everyone is to be congratulated. So thank you, and the finance committee. We had a little piece of that.
Yep. Well, and I would throw in the Financial Advisory Commission. I think they've been helpful all along the way to move us in this direction. But there's no doubt about the strength that our finance director has brought to our financial processes and systems, and we do appreciate it. So thank you. I also saw the mayor made mention of line item budgets detail, and I'm happy that we have that too, and we thank Katie for making that happen, Katie Connolly. But in any event, all right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move adjournment.
I second that. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Everybody wish my dad a happy 97th birthday today.